Sleep enables us to be again at this optimal place when we wake up to go and excel in everything that we do.
Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 329. Today is Sunday the 26th of May 2019. Happy Memorial Day. And this interview is with Dr. Katharina Lederle. Katharina is an author and specialist in sleep, circadian rhythm and fatigue. She's founder and director of sleep services at Somnia, and she's the author of the book Sleep Sense. Kat helps people improve their sleep and live their lives to the full. Among other things with Kat, we discuss why we sleep, the benefits of getting good sleep, the workings of our internal human clock, dreams, and some great tips and tricks for improving your sleep. Welcome to the Minter Dialogue podcast, where we discuss branding and all things digital. I am Minterdial, your host, and you'll find the show notes on my eponymous site, minterdial.com. Enjoy the show. Kat Lederle, pleasure to have you on the show. Tell us who you are.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Okay.
Who am I? That's a very good question. Parts of me, I would say, are a sleep specialist, chronobiologist, basically someone who helps people understand sleep better, to improve their sleep, to enjoy their life more. I think that's really who I am.
Great. Well, and that's, of course, why I wanted to have you on the show. Kat, tell us how you got into sleep, because when I studied sleep at university back in the 80s, I was considered a goon, or a knubblehead. What on earth are you doing studying sleep? Minter used to say to me, friends. How did you get into sleep?
I think for me it was just a moment of luck. I actually trained in biology and zoology and really focused on animal behavior. And after my master's, I worked on a project in South Africa with meerkats. And it was there that I thought, what else is here for me? As much as I enjoyed that work, it was sort of what else is here for me? And I knew I wanted to do a PhD. I wanted to stay on in academia. And I just simply found this PhD in sleep and chronobiology advertised and applied for it, was accepted. And then it just was the best thing I've ever done.
So the moral of the story is be open to new experiences.
Absolutely, absolutely. And looking back for me, sort of chronobiology, so the timing system of the body, that has always been there in my studies. But first it was focused on animals and then it shifted on human beings. But the openness and taking a moment for things to come up, to develop, rather than making rash decisions, that's the other important part.
So the beauty of serendipity and yet reflection.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when back in my days, and I used to study with the marvelous Mark Rosekind, we called him an FSR, a famous sleep researcher back in those days. Something I recall was that despite all the evidence and the research ongoing, we still struggled to define why adults actually sleep. It seemed that it was very clear for children what was going on during sleep. Where are we today, and why do we need sleep?
So we still don't know. It's still a mystery. The function of sleep is still elusive. We have lots of theories and hypotheses, but we can't yet say exactly why.
I mean, people are listening to this. They're all going to say, well, duh, I know why I'm sleeping. I'm tired. I need to sleep. There's an intuitiveness to it, and yet the weird thing is that there isn't a scientific reason for it, as I understand.
Yeah, so there's still, and there's a lot of research going on, and I think there isn't just one function. I think there are multiple functions, and there's a lot of things we observe. And for me, really, I see sleep as the temporal niche for the body to do the restoration the recovery, the replenishing of resources that we have used up during the day. And so sleep enables us to be, again, at this optimal place when we wake up to go and excel in everything that we do, cognitively, physically, mentally, or emotionally as well. That's really what it does. And so, as I said, the restoration and the recovery, we see that very much in the metabolism, or the brain is cleansing itself from all the waste products. But then there's also the learning and the memory, and that's something I find really, really fascinating, that sleep is enabling us to learn. And there's one hypothesis is the synaptic hypothesis, which says that during the day when we are learning, the strength of the synapses in the brain increase. Now, there's only so much space we have in the brain, right, that heart, skull, and also all of these connections, they need to be supplied with energy, or they will take up energy, they need metabolism as well. And so what happens overnight is that we have a scale back, a pruning of these synapses, not all of them, but some of them. Now, what we still don't understand is
why some and why not others.
Exactly. Is there a tagging that's taking place? We don't quite know. But the point here is that their sleep helps us to learn, right? And learning is so fundamental, again, for our success in life, to just survive, actually.
Chrono, where is the clock?
Where's the clock? Well, we've got lots of clocks in the body. We have a master clock that sits up in the brain, and in the human being, it's about 50,000 cells that we commonly refer to as the clock. But then we have lots of other clocks. Almost every cell has its own clock, so the peripheral clocks. And I like to think of it like an orchestra. So your master clock up in your brain is the conductor that sets sort of the timing and the beat. And then all the other sort of instruments or musicians, i.e. the other cells and organs, they sort of play in tune. What we see is that sometimes there is a dysynchrony between your master clock and, let's just say, your liver clock. Shift work, jet lag, all contribute to this mismatch. And that over time can then actually lead to metabolic problems. So there's nowadays a lot more interest in understanding not just the master clock but also the peripheral clocks, how they work together, and how our modern society, or the lifestyle of our society, is impacting on this system.
Wow. Dreams. Or do we need to dream?
Do we need to dream? So, really interesting. And I'm really amazed and admire every dream researcher, because I find it such a, not just fascinating subject, but also so hard to do. Because when you wake up in the morning, if you remember your dream, is this the dream you had, or is this your waking brain filling in, adding to it? So the data you're collecting as a researcher there, I always wonder, how, well, when I say accurate, how real is it? No, that's still not the right word. But what you're working with, there's so much uncertainty.
It's ephemeral.
Right, yeah.
And then some of us dream and remember well, some of us dream, don't remember. It can be a good experience, bad experiences, and obviously our emotional context weighs heavily both in what we dream about, what we remember about our dreams, our ability even to want to remember them. Yeah,
exactly. So it looks like we all dream. It's the remembrance, that's the thing. But you can train yourself. You can get better at remembering your dream by keeping a journal. And every morning, as soon as you wake up, you just write down whatever you remember. Or if it's nothing, then you may write, I don't remember anything. But you spend some time there, you reflect. And it's quite likely that after time, things will come up and you'll get better at it.
You mentioned before that, let's say, the current state of affairs says that sleep is about restoration. Dreaming is not that. You with rapid eye movement, your brain's on just as it is in a conscious level, down to your throat or your neck, and then the rest of your body is paralyzed, so to speak. So something are the synapses being pruned during the dreams, do you think? Why would you do in a period of restoration dreams, which are not about relaxing and restoration, in my opinion anyway?
Mm-hmm. So the scaling of the synapses is most likely to happen in the deep sleep, in the non-REM sleep.
3-4.
No, exactly. No, the REM sleep you could still view it as a restoration of your emotions and your emotional reactivity. So the idea that REM sleep and dreaming is part of REM sleep, right? It's an aspect, but that REM sleep is to help us process our emotions from the day that we had, or maybe the last few days that we had. So again, getting us to a more balanced state, that we don't immediately react in the same way or to the full degree as we did before. So there again, that notion of restoration is still there.
And we get their nightmares.
Yet they're nightmares. Yeah, that's a sleep disorder. Yeah, so there might be different areas in the brain that are overactive. Again, we need to understand it better. But often it is related to an event that happened in the life.
All right. So, of the huge questions that are out there, inevitably, when one starts to talk about sleep, how much sleep do I need, Kat?
How much sleep you need, I could tell you, to be honest. We have to discuss a bit more what's going on for you, because we all differ in the amount of sleep we need. And so when the media reports you have to sleep for 8 hours between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., I think nothing is further from the truth, because you as an individual have to find out what is my sleep need and what are my sleep timings, and then sleep according to that window. That's the important thing. So everyone has to do a little sort of discovery there themselves. However, having said that, there's a broad range or recommendation out there, which is for an adult is between 7 and 9 hours. For me, key is how you're waking up, how you're going about your day. Do you wake up feeling refreshed and allowing for a moment of sleep inertia in the beginning? But then do you feel refreshed? Do you rely on caffeine or other caffeinated drinks? Do you rely on a nap? All of these things should be taken into consideration before saying, okay, this is how much sleep you need. And then also sleep need can be different, or the duration can be different between days depending on what you are doing. The more active we are, the more sleep we will need.
Well, I also believe that the more active I am, the less easy it is to fall asleep. Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing a marathon, the chances of me just falling asleep during the, however many hours I have to run are light. Yet if I'm reading a book for the same amount of time, I would argue I will more likely fall asleep. So if I had a lesser amount of sleep before a marathon, notwithstanding the performance issue, I will be more likely to stay awake. Whereas if what I'm doing that day is reading, therefore more reposed, I'm more likely to sleep.
I think, again, everyone is slightly different. Is for me, how I judge my activities in relation to sleep. So my beliefs around sleep play a huge role. So the psychology there plays a huge role.
Well, like some people say, well, I don't need sleep, that kind of a belief.
Yeah, exactly. Although, that is a belief that is just not true, because we all need sleep. Again,
although we don't know why, but we do need sleep.
Yeah, exactly, because we see what's going wrong if we don't get enough of it. But to then say immediately, well, that's why we need to sleep, it's not that easy. Right,
so you mentioned naps just now. In the military, or the Navy, there's often this idea of 2 times 4, 2 by 4. So you will stay up for 8, go to sleep for 4, stay up for 8, go to sleep for 4, and you continue on the cycle like that. And there are some people that suggest that that's a really great way to sleep. Because you get sleep deprived and you go quickly into deep sleep, non-REM, because you're always in a fatigue, and you get the benefit of that early sleep that's more restorative, longer non-REM period when you're in stage 3, 4. And so that's an argument. And then there's another one which says, well, sleep for a bit and then have a nap. Because especially as you get older, of course, your sleeping habits will change. So how does one, get to know what's the right, story? I mean, obviously who you are, but how does one, what are the signals or the tips you might have for getting to get that right?
So the ideal scenario is, take maybe 5 or 6 days holiday, and you don't leave the country, or certainly not the time zone. And then you sort of to put away all the caffeinated drinks, alcohol, especially blue light emitting devices, and then just go to bed and get up as and when you feel ready for it. And it probably takes a few days to sort of repay the immediate sleep debt. But then by day 5 or 6, you should know what your need around sleep is. And then it's about sticking to that as much as you can.
A lot of times when we talk about sleep, it's actually the time when we're in bed. But it seems to me that it's the time when we're not in bed that is the opportunity to make for better sleep. In other words, the rituals you have going into bed, the type of worrying that you have in your conscious day, which resurfaces as the moment you wake up or doesn't allow you to fall asleep comfortably. So it feels like the most of the day and what you're thinking during the day impacts the way you sleep.
Absolutely. So that's something I argue in my book, Sleep Sense, that the moment you wake up in the morning, that's when you start preparing for the next night. Yeah, that's really it. It's not just the hour or last 2 hours where it's all about the wind down routine. It starts much, much earlier, exactly what you said just there. And for me, again, in the society that we live in, it's so fast paced. You haven't even finished one thing, you're starting already the next. You mentioned worry, the anxiety levels are much higher in our society. That all has an impact on sleep. So if I find ways to reduce anxiety, or the common word stress levels, while also exposing myself to a lot of natural light, preferably in the early part of the day, all of this can help to improve nighttime sleep, the quality and duration of my nighttime sleep. Point is to not just wait for the evening. You start much earlier.
And so how much do you give credence to good beds and pillows? Is that really a vital component to it as well?
You have to feel comfortable in your bed. You have to look forward to going there. Yeah, that sort of sanctuary to spend there, let's just say those mythical 8 hours, or a little bit longer in case you read. So make it as comfortable as you want it. If you lie there and you aren't comfortable or even in pain, that will affect your sleep. Yeah, that will reduce the quality, potentially also the duration.
So I have another belief, Kat, which is men and women sleep differently. Tell me I'm wrong.
I can't, unfortunately, because there are differences. And again, that's very sort of general. But generally speaking, women tend to go to bed earlier, so their clock is set to an earlier phase.
So this is this famous master clock.
Yeah, exactly. But because we want to spend time with our partner, women then go to bed somewhat later. Yeah, so therefore already reducing sort of the duration of the sleep they need. In addition to that, you then have sort of biological differences, biological events like pregnancy, menstruation, menopause, postmenopause. All of that, also the hormonal fluctuations playing a huge role there. Yeah. And interestingly, there's also a perception issue, and I'm really fascinated by this. Most women subjectively will say that they don't sleep well, but objectively measured, their sleep is actually much better, and they get more deep sleep than men, for example. But the subjective feeling is entirely different. Yeah. And for me, it's interesting to find ways to support women there to get that feeling of, I had a restful night.
Mm-hmm. And get over that perception, because as soon as you have the perception issue, it becomes my reality.
Yeah, that's my reality for me. And for me, it's always important as a therapist to work with that, to listen to the experience of the individual and to find ways of, okay, how can we change this? How can we make this better?
All right, what are the let's say, top tips that really could just most measurably change people's approach to sleeping? Because we know that the number of people that have sleep disorders or chronic sleep deprivation, sleep issues in general, is so high and rampantly everywhere, it feels to me. What are the big tips that you prefer to give to everybody?
My problem starts with the tips you prefer to give to everybody.
Right, you can't do it for everybody. Everybody's different.
The situation is often, is different and plays a huge role. But what's important for me is, as I said before, is finding your personal sleep window and sleeping according to that window. Creating a comfortable space, making sleep a priority in my daily life. And that's what I mean, lifestyle and sleep behaviors. That is all sort of geared towards supporting sleep. So seeing sleep as an integral part of my life. Yeah, that's
all right. So, being an author, as you are, Sleep Sense, what books would you recommend if someone's really interested in getting better at their sleep, understanding better how they could sleep personally? Are there any FSR, VFSR books, very famous sleep researcher, books that you would recommend to people to read?
So in order to learn about sleep in more detail, yes, apart from my book, there's also Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. Then there is a book by Professor Russell Foster and a colleague of his. It's The Short Introduction to Sleep, I believe that's called.
I'll put links to all this in the show notes, of course.
Pardon?
I'll put all links to all this in the show notes.
Yes. And I think those two books, they are great ways of finding a way in to sleep. And then it's about listening to your own body. What is helping me and what isn't? And if there's a racing mind, which is something you mentioned earlier on, it's about looking at ways, how can I work with this mind rather than striving to control that racing mind and stopping it from racing, because that can make you very rigid, angry, frustrated if you can't, and it's likely that you won't, because the mind just does what it's supposed to do and thinks. So that's what I'm saying.
That's
it's a way
autonomy,
of working.
doesn't it?
Yeah. It's to work with it. And for me, mindfulness meditation is a wonderful way to help you regulate the mind in a more helpful way.
So, as I meditate daily every morning, just 10 minutes, would you suggest that the meditation, if sleep is an issue, it's better to do meditation before you go to bed, sometime in the evening, or in the morning? What would you recommend?
No, meditate when it's the right time for you. If you put it to the evening with the expectation, this will get me to sleep, this will improve the quality of my sleep, it's unlikely that it will.
So if you're doing it with that intention, it will go wrong, because your little racy head, you will just reject it. Yeah,
you're waiting. You're setting up an experiment in a way, and you're monitoring, is my experiment working? Which way is it going? Yeah, and so you could argue you're keeping yourself awake there by having that expectation. If the expectation, I'm falling asleep, isn't met, how do you feel? Most likely angry, frustrated, anxious. How's the next day going to be? So you're staying in that vicious circle, right? So mindfulness in itself hasn't been designed for anything, and we all have the ability to be mindful. What does it mean? It just means noticing the present moment, non-judgmentally, being objective about what's going on. And if I don't judge, if I remain objective, I remain calm, because I'm not getting worked up. I'm not getting angry. Equally, I'm not getting uber excited, because both of these are activating. I'm staying in that calm, neutral place. And for me, actually, I prefer, like you, to meditate in the morning. It helps me. It sets up my day. It helps me to be in that calmer place, or to return to it much quicker. Yeah. And then that can sort of support me also in the evening or at night. And it starts by just acknowledging my mind's racing tonight. Wow.
It's like you said, you start off thinking about your next night's sleep the moment you wake up at some level.
Yeah.
So, chronos, time clocks, the thing many people will say is, I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we only have exactly the same amount of time that we've ever had. And that's not changed. But there is this feeling that we are in a race against a faster time somehow. Yeah. So has that had an impact on the internal clock? Is there any correlation between the, let's say the internet and the speed with which communications are happening and the sense of an acceleration of time on our internal clock?
No, the clock's still ticking, with its rhythm. And again, that rhythm is different between people. Hence, we've got also different sleep timings. For most people, it's a little bit longer than 24 hours, right. Something around 24 hours and 10 minutes. Yeah. But for others, it might be shorter, just 23 hours and 58 minutes. Yeah, and that's down to your genetic makeup. But that has stayed the same. That hasn't changed. But that's sort of maybe also why we're experiencing all of these problems, because our cultural time, the societal time, that is going faster and faster and faster. And it's also imposing a certain rhythm on us, which for many people, not everyone, but for many people, isn't in sync with their body rhythm, which is what I said early on, can then lead to metabolic problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, it strikes me as one of the biggest topics. I always talk about it being one of the three most important levers of productivity in business, sleep. Mm-hmm. And yet we don't talk about it enough. Is something taboo about it? Or why isn't it that schools don't teach sleep? Why is it that the businesses don't have courses on how to sleep better? Why is it always about how to use Excel better?
Because I think for a long time, the view has been, sleep's a waste of time. Mm-hmm. I would say it is slowly changing. People are becoming more and more interested, literally waking up to the importance of sleep. But for a long time, it's been viewed as a waste of time. And it's in this capitalistic world, it's all about consuming, producing and consuming. When we are asleep, we can't consume, right? Mm. So the interest is about keeping us awake for as long as possible. Hence, we have the 24/7 society, constant lighting, if we want it. So now, though, that I do believe really that view is slowly changing, and we're going back to what the ancient Greek have said, that sleep is of value to health and well-being, that we give it again the priority it should have. Schools, you mentioned schools, for example, they are starting to teach children something about sleep, or to adjust school start times. Mm-hmm. And these children who go through that school start times are made to match their clock and not the other way around.
Right, the adults who are running it.
Yeah. Sorry, say again?
It's made to run the adults who are running the school's time, and the parents' time. You've got to go to work. And
also society, right? It's this, I have to go to work. Often it clashes with adults as well. But it's just like, this is what we do in order to be productive. Not acknowledging that people are different, have different needs, and if we paid attention to their needs, actually they would be more productive, which then overall increases productivity of the company. So that's not looked at. People aren't open enough. But again, I think this is changing, and children will, this is my hope, demand much more from their future employers around sleep and work times.
We've seen some schools experimenting with meditation and mindfulness and the benefits that can have. So ever hopeful that'll continue. Naps is my next topic, Kat. Mm-hmm. I am 54 years old and have willingly and enjoyably decided that naps should be part of my daily routine. There's such a pleasure. It's short and sharp. That's how I do it. Mm-hmm. Do you counsel naps? Do you think that's just a sign that I'm not sleeping enough during my night, and I should be doing more by night? Mm-hmm. And then what do you recommend for people with naps?
So I think there are nappers and non-nappers. So I certainly am a non-napper. I can try, but I just don't. My dad is a napper, and he's done this all his life. Early afternoon, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that's what he's doing. He doesn't have a sleep problem. He sleeps well at night. He wakes up feeling refreshed and So that's all fine. So, and I think this is really what it comes down to. Again, it's on a very individual basis. Some people just need that extra top up, but they sleep fine at night. And for others, they have a problem. They try to compensate something here that's missing. And then I would say be careful with the napping. Let's work on the nighttime sleep. Let's improve that first and see how the napping behavior then is developing.
In my mind, I have a little narrative that says, you just mentioned yourself, you don't, your father does, I do, my wife doesn't. I'm making a connection. Women and men sleep differently and naps are different for women and men. Any research that warrants that, or I'm just barking up the wrong tree?
No, not that I have seen any research on that, no.
Right, so last question, Kat. Some people may want to nap, maybe it's the good thing, maybe it's not. We have Google and the likes of Facebook and so on who are really trendy, and they have foosball tables and nap pods. Napping at work. I mean, in Japan, it's said that the chief executives, and actually in many countries, the chief executives feels that they have the right to put their head down for a power nap. And yet the rest of the company gets just to work hard because that's productive. What is your opinion on the possibility of introducing naps into work? Is that a bad idea, like the foosball table or open spaces, or a good idea? How do you go with that?
I think, again, there's no one-size-fits-all answer to that. So in itself, offering people the opportunity to take a nap, I think is great. But one also has to look at, okay, why are they taking that nap? What are the working conditions like? What is their sleep like at night? If they're working long hours, staying late, starting early in the morning.
2-hour commute.
Exactly. Then you can quite quickly imagine, the opportunity to sleep at night is compressed, is very short. And then having a nap pod is just a way of compensating for the lost sleep from the nighttime. And then I would rather work on the long working hours, the working conditions or parameters to allow people to get the sleep they need at night. That's, for me, is the priority.
So somehow it sounds like the nap is a symptom.
It can be, exactly.
I mean, whether it's sleeping poorly or conditions at work, so you need to go upstream and figure out what's the cause.
Yeah, exactly. And changing that culture. Yeah, leaving the nap pot there, by all means, but changing the overall culture, that it's the health and well-being of the individual, that is the priority, because that's your biggest asset, right? You want that to be able to function well, to increase productivity overall.
And naps, obviously I've read a little bit about this, and there are different forms of naps that one can take. I used to say never more than 40 minutes, so I didn't get into REM sleep. I now feel that sort of 15, 20 minutes, sort of like stage 1 and 2, I don't get into 3, 4, so it's not too deep. That feels like a natural amount of sleep. Is this, again, something that has to be per person, per day, what the situation is? Or do you have more specific counsel on how to nap better?
No, I would keep it to the 20, 30 minutes, absolutely, to avoid falling into deep sleep. However, if you didn't sleep enough at night, maybe even for a number of nights, your pressure to sleep will be much higher.
And get the REM in and do the 1.5 hours.
Yeah, but it may also be that you get into deep sleep much quicker.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just to be a bit mindful there and having this awareness of your own sleep behavior.
Fabulous. Kat, thanks for coming on the show. Tell us how we can find out more about you, get your book, and follow what you're up to.
So, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here this morning. The book is on Amazon, called Sleep Sense, and otherwise, if you want to get in touch, the best way would be via my company, Somnia. Just reaching out that way, sending me an email.
I will put all that in the show notes. Kat,
thank you very much.
Coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for having listened to this recording of the Minter Dialogue Show. You'll find the show notes and other blog posts on minterdial.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes to give a rating and review. And to finish, here's a song I wrote with Stephanie Singer, A Convinced Man.
stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust is the reason, still I won't toe the line. I sit here passively, hope for your respect, anticipating the thrill of your intellect. Maybe I tell myself there's no use in me lying. I'm a convinced man building an urge. I'm a convinced man to live and die submerged. A convinced man in the arms of a woman. I'm a convinced man, challenge my fate. I'm a convinced man, competition's innate. A convinced man in the arms of a woman. Despise revenges and struggle to see. Live for the challenge so life's not incomplete. What's wrong with challenge? I know soon we all die. I like the feel of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust in my reason and let me show you why.